Okay, so chapter 3, we are now in chapter 3, transport and circulation. All right. So last class, we have discussed just a little bit introduction related to the importance of transportation, transport and circulation in unicellular organism and also multicellular organism, where we have seen that unicellular organism only require simple diffusion for the exchange to take place, but somehow for a multicellular organism, right, they require complex transport system that we call as circulatory system. Okay, and we have discussed there are two types of circulatory system: open circulatory system and closed circulatory system. So our focus is to discuss the detail of closed circulatory system. Okay, and then next one, we have discussed about the mammalian cardiovascular system. Okay, so first we have looked at the function of vertebrate circulatory system, right, where the major function of vertebrate circulatory system is to transport. So transport in such a way to transport nutrient, to transport waste, to transport oxygen or respiratory gases, to transport hormones, all right, help in maintaining the fluid balance. All right, so these are some of the function of circulatory system. All right, and after that we have looked at the overview of cardiovascular system. Okay, so we have somehow explore a little bit the pathway of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, okay, within the blood circulatory system. Okay. Okay, and then we have discussed also a little bit detailed structure of the heart. Okay, and we have discussed about the valve which can be found in the human heart. Okay, so remember the valve that found between the juncture of atrium and ventricle we call as atrioventricular valve. Okay, or we can simplify as AV valve, and which can be found here and also here. All right, between the junction of atrium and ventricle, and then the valve that can be found through the exit of the ventricle into the large arteries known as semilunar valve. Okay, and we have also looked at the specific name of atrioventricular valve for the right side of the heart and for the left side of the heart. Okay, so another name for AV valve on the right side of the heart. I'm not sure kalau semalam mungkin ada tersilap, tapi madam lupa nak apa nama, tak perasan ke apa ke. Okay, the right side of the heart, the AV valve is known as tricuspid. Tricuspid valve, and the left side is known as bicuspid valve. Sorry. All right. Okay. So, okay, and then we have looked into the detail of all blood vessels that what we call it, veins and arteries that sending blood into the heart and transporting blood out of the heart. Okay. All right. So you can see from here. So this is the right side of the heart. This is the left side of the heart. So the right side of the heart, the what you call it, the valve is known as tricuspid valve. Okay. Whereby the left side of the heart known as bicuspid valve. Okay. All right, so you can see here, this is the tricuspid valve, right? It has three flaps, okay, of tissue that control the opening and closing of the valve, right? Whereby to the left side of the heart, we have the bicuspid valve, right? Also known as mitral valve, okay? And here is the semilunar valve, or the specific name we call as pulmonary valve for the right side of the heart. And then for the left side of the heart, the specific the specific semilunar valve is known as aortic valve. Tapi sama, dua-dua ni adalah semilunar valve. Okay, right. Okay, so next, let's see the difference in terms of thickness. Okay, thickness of the wall between artery and also ventricle, and what are the significance of having those different thickness. Okay, both atria and have thin wall, right? Because they serve as collection chamber for the heart that return back to the for the blood that return back to the heart. So they have thick wall because the edges function as collection chamber to collect the blood that coming back into the heart. Whereby ventricles, both ventricles have thicker wall compared to atria. Okay, but the left ventricle have more thicker wall. Okay, left ventricle have thicker wall compared to the right ventricle. Okay, why? Because it contract forceful blood that need to be pumped to the rest of the body, right? Because left ventricle will pump the blood to the rest of the body. So the blood pressure should be in a very high pressure. So that's why the wall of the left ventricle will be thicker compared to the right, compared to the right ventricle. Okay, right. Okay, so another thing is what you can see, this is pericardium. So pericardium is a tissue, right, that cover and protect the heart structure. Okay, macam kalau tulang pun dia ada pericardium kan, dia ada dia punya covering. So same goes to the heart. So dia ada dia punya covering. Okay, right. Okay, so you can see this is the flow of blood through the heart. Okay, starting from the right atrium. So blood will come ataupun blood will actually enters the right atrium from vena cava, right? And then from the right atrium, the blood will be transported to the right ventricle through the tricuspid valve or atrioventricular valve. And then from the right ventricle, it will be pumped out of the heart, going into the lung via semilunar valve, or we call as pulmonic valve. Right? So in the lung, oxygen will be loaded. So oxygenated blood will return back to the heart, right? Via pulmonary artery into the left atrium. And after that, from the left atrium, it will be sent or transported into the left ventricle via mitral valve or the bicuspid valve. And then will be pumped out to the rest of the body through the aorta. Okay, via aortic valve. So this is the pathway that you have to understand related to the transportation of blood within the heart. Okay. Okay, so we have discussed about the structure of the heart, pathway of blood going through the heart, the different thickness between the wall of atrium and ventricle. Why the left ventricle have thicker wall compared to the right ventricle. Okay, so now we are going into a little bit something new for you, all right, that you will learn related to the cardiac cycle. Okay, so what is cardiac cycle? So cardiac cycle is actually sequence that happen in every single heartbeat. Apa yang berlaku pada setiap detak jantung kita? What happened to the heart? What happened to the blood pressure? What happened to the valve of the heart? Okay, right. So the next LO is to describe cardiac cycle, including blood pressure during systole and diastole. Okay, what is systole? Systole is contraction. Okay, contraction of the heart, and diastole referring to the relaxation stage or relaxation mode of the heart. All right, so we have two terms, systole and diastole. Okay. Okay, so cardiac cycle is the sequence of event during completion of one heartbeat. So it involves repeated contraction and relaxation of the heart. So systole is the phase of contraction, or another term we can refer as the pumping phase, right? Pumping phase of the heart. Whereby diastole refers to relaxation or the feeling phase. Meaning to say the blood or the heart is filled with blood. Okay, right. So human at rest with a pulse of 72 beats per minute, right? So contoh kalau kita duduk diam-diam, try to check your pulse in 1 minute. So usually normal resting adult, your heartbeat will be around 60 plus to 80. All right, so we use here range of 72 beats per minute. So if a adult with a pulse of 72 beat per minute, one complete cardiac cycle requires 0. Or completed within 0.8 second. Maknanya satu detak jantung kita itu complete the process within 0.8 second. Okay, right. Okay, what is pulse? Okay, pulse is rhythmic bulging of the artery wall within each heartbeat. Right? So it's divided into 3 phases. Okay, 3 phases. Number 1, arterial systole and ventricular diastole. Maknanya fasa pertama yang berlaku ialah atrial contract, ventricle relax. That is the first phase. Okay, atrial systole, ventricular diastole. So this take around 0.1 second. Okay. Second phase is ventricular systole, atrial diastole. So now ventricle systole, ventricle contract, atria will be relaxed. And it took around 0.3 second. All right. And number 3 is atria and ventricular diastole. Both atrium and ventricle will relax. And this takes around 0.4 second. All right. Okay. So these 3 phases will explain to you in detail in relation to the pressure of blood in that particular phase, what happened to the valve in that particular phase, and where is the pathway of blood during that particular phase. Okay. All right. So you can see from here, okay, this is what we call as atrial systole, right? Somehow you can see that the atrium is contract. Okay, and you will know later what happened to the valve and what happened to the ventricle. Okay, so this is what we are going to discuss. Okay. Okay, so we are going to start with the first stage, atrial systole and ventricular diastole. Okay, right. So what happened during this stage? Both atria, okay, we are focused on this stage. Okay, both atria, the right side and the left side of atria, both will contract simultaneously. Both atria will contract. So when atria contract, so it actually forcing all remaining blood out of the atria and transported into the ventricle. So seolah-olah macam when atria contract, it will force or it will empty the atria. Okay, the purpose is to empty the atria and the blood will be transported or sent into the ventricle. Okay, that is what happened in the first 0.1 second to ensure the atria is empty. Okay, to ensure atria is emptied with blood, all blood sent to the ventricle. Okay, so that's why masa dia pendek je, 0.1 second. Okay, right, that is the first one. Okay, very simple. So now you have to imagine your blood now is in the ventricle. Your atria is already empty. So meaning that it will switch into a relaxation mode. Your atria will relax, then your ventricle will be full with blood, right? Okay, so that one. Okay, so look here, right? This is what happened when you can see your atria contract. So when the atria is contract, it actually forcing the blood into the ventricle. And here you can see that AV valve is open. Okay, of course lah AV valve kena buka. Kenapa? Sebab dia nak force blood masuk dalam ventricle kan. So AV valve kena buka. AV valve is open. Okay, right. Okay, next. Second stage. Okay, ventricular systole and atrial diastole, 0.3 second. Ventricle will contract, atria will relax, 0.3 second. So what happened? Blood will start to fill up the atrium. Remember why blood start to fill up the atrium? Because now your atrium is empty. And then your atrium is now in the diastole mode. Dia dah relax. So bila relax, it can receive blood that coming from the vena cava ke pulmonary vein ke kan, right? Okay, we are here. So this stage Okay, right. So what happened? Ventricle will contract. So you can see ventricle start to contract. Okay, ventricle will start to contract as it is full with blood, right? So kenapa dia start contract? The pressure inside the ventricle is higher compared to the pressure inside the atria. Bayangkan ventricle tu macam dah penuh, dah sampai tahap limit dia, so the pressure will rises. So when the pressure inside the ventricle rises, right, compared to the pressure inside the atria, there is a valve that will close. Okay, valve apa yang tutup? Anyone?
AV valve.
AV valve, very good. Because you have to know that bayangkan antara atria and ventricle ada valve that open and close, open and close. So when pressure inside the ventricle is very high, dia akan force the valve to close. Sebab darah dalam ni dah penuh. So AV valve will close. Okay. So the closing of the AV valve will cause or will produce the first sound, the loop sound. Okay, so the closing of AV valve akan menghasilkan satu bunyi lah. Okay, iaitu loop sound. So bunyi jantung kita bukannya bunyi dup dap dup dap dup 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 dup, bukan, the loop dup loop dup loop. Okay, right. Okay, so AV valve is closed. So why AV valve is closed? Kenapa AV valve kena tutup? To prevent the blood from the ventricle return back to atria. Okay, dia nak pastikan darah tak patah balik masuk dalam atrium. Okay, at the same time, okay, this is the first explanation about pressure. Pressure in the ventricle is higher compared to the pressure in atria. Second condition of pressure that happen is pressure in ventricle is higher than the pressure in aorta and pulmonary artery. Okay, so you can see here, pressure inside the ventricle is higher compared to the pressure inside the aorta and pulmonary artery. Okay, so we know the concept of pressure, right? So blood will flow from high pressure to low pressure. So in this case, the blood will be forced to be pumped out of the heart from the ventricle into either the pulmonary artery or the aorta. So this will cause the semilunar valve to open, so that blood can be transported out from the ventricle into the aorta or into the pulmonary artery. Semilunar valve will open. Thus, it will pump blood into the large arteries. Okay, so this is what condition that you have to understand in relate to the second stage, ventricular systole, atrial diastole. So ada dua jenis different in terms of pressure. And you have two conditions related to valve. Okay, and then you will know which one, as one valve, particular valve is open, you know what is the pathway of the blood going through after that. Okay, so now you have to imagine that your blood now is pumped out of the large vein. So darah kita dah ada dalam aorta and also pulmonary artery. Okay, so blood is pumped into the large arteries. Okay, then we switch to the third stage. Okay. Okay, before that, you can watch this, right? This animation showing you the closing of AV valve. Okay, you can see what happened to the wall of the ventricle, right? So ventricle contract. So as ventricle contract, because of high pressure of ventricle compared to atria, it will force the AV valve to close to prevent the blood, to prevent the backflow of blood into the atrium. Okay, and this one showing you the opening of semilunar valve, right? So you can see, again, still when the systole, ventricular systole takes place, so blood will be pumped out into the large arteries, which makes the semilunar valve to be open, AV valve will be closed. All right, okay. Okay, next. The third stage of cardiac cycle, atrial and ventricular diastole. Okay, remember atrial and ventricular diastole. Okay, so now imagine that now our blood is here in the large arteries. Okay, right? So next what happened? So since ventricle has been contracted, so blood has been pushed or blood has been pumped from the ventricle into the large arteries, aorta or pulmonary artery. So next what happened to the ventricle? Both ventricle and atrial will be relaxed, okay, or we call as diastole. Okay, switch into diastole mode lah. Okay, so both atria and ventricle will relax. So next, blood returning from the large vein flows into the atria. So since our atria is relaxed, so blood will be transporting into the or flow into the atrium from the large vein, daripada vena cava ataupun pulmonary vein. Okay. Okay, right? So next, so now you imagine blood flowing or flowing into the atria from the vena cava and also pulmonary veins. Okay, and this will cause the pressure inside the atria to be increased. All right. So as pressure inside the atria is increased, so in this case, pressure of atria is higher compared to the pressure in the ventricle because ventricle is already empty, right? And this will force the AV valve to open. So blood can be transported from the atria into the ventricle. Okay, macam seolah-olah dalam atria tu kita dah isi, nak agak penuh, pressure dia dah naik. So blood pun akan hantar masuk ke dalam ventricle. Okay, right? So AV valve is open. Right. At the same time, okay, this is what you can see. AV valve is open. So blood flow from the atria into the ventricle as the pressure inside the atria is higher compared to the pressure inside the ventricle. Okay, right. At the same time, okay, remember, pressure in aorta and pulmonary artery increase. Why? Remember just now, when ventricle contract, blood is pumped out into the large arteries in the aorta and pulmonary artery. So the pressure inside the aorta and pulmonary artery is higher compared to the pressure inside ventricle. Okay, so pressure in aorta and pulmonary artery is higher compared to the pressure in the ventricle. Alright, so you just imagine kat sini darah banyak sangat dah. So the pressure increase. So the pressure inside the ventricle is lower. Alright, so what happened is the blood is having tendency to flow back into the ventricle from high pressure to the low pressure. So to avoid that from happen, semilunar valve will close. Okay, sebab pressure terlalu tinggi dalam aorta, tinggi sangat, so dia menyebabkan valve tu macam seolah-olah tutup macam ni. Right, instead of dia open macam ni, dia tutup macam ni. Right, so bila dia tutup, then it produce the second sound, the doop sound. So the purpose of semilunar valve close is to prevent the blood from flowing back or returning back to the ventricle. So another word, to prevent backflow of blood. Okay, from large artery into the ventricle. Okay, right. So that is what happened within every single heartbeat. Okay, so divided into 3 phases. It depends how much time needed to complete one cardiac cycle is depend on the pulse or depend on the heartbeat of that particular person. So kalau soalan exam given to you a person with 85 beat per minute of heart rate contohnya kan, or pulse, what is the time ataupun what is the time needed to complete one cardiac cycle. So it depends on the it depends on the heart rate of a person. Okay, right. Okay, right. Okay, next, the production of the loop and the doop sound. Okay, before that, okay, macam mana boleh dapat 0.8 tadi tu? Macam mana kira dia? What is the calculation? Anyone? A person have 72 beats per minute. So how did you manage to get 0.8 second?
Divided by 72.
Very good. So this is the calculation. 60, because we are referring to 1 minute, divided by the heart rate. Okay, so if the heart rate is 72, then you get 0.8 plus lah. Roughly 0.8. Okay, right. So in case question asking about that one. Okay, next. Okay, the loop and the doop sound, right? So the loop sound, remember the first sound is the loop sound. The loop sound is produced by the closing of AV valve. Okay, so what happened here? Ingat balik, masa stage yang mana AV valve close tu? Stage yang mana satu? Atrial systole, ventricular diastole ke? Kan? Ventricular systole, atrial diastole ke? So itu you kena ingat balik. Right? So the closing of this AV valve, when this AV valve close, it actually mark the beginning of ventricular systole. Maksudnya dia memberi tanda bahawa ini adalah permulaan kepada ventricular contraction. Right? When the AV valve is closed. Okay? As for the doop sound, right? The doop sound is caused by the closing of semilunar valve. So bayangkan kat mana masa bila semilunar valve close? Remember when the blood is already pumped from the ventricle into the large arteries. Okay, so pressure in the large arteries is higher compared to the pressure inside the ventricle. And that is why semilunar valve is closed. And what is the significance of the closing of semilunar valve? It actually gives you indication that your ventricle is started to relax. Okay, or it marked the beginning of ventricular diastole. Okay. All right. Any question related to the cardiac cycle? Tak ada? Okay, all right. So hopefully everyone okay, because this cardiac cycle is quite important. Question can come and asking you by giving just one picture of one stage of cardiac cycle, asking you to explain on that particular stage, and maybe asking you what happened next. Right. Ataupun dia bagi you one cycle, dia akan tanya lu which one is the maybe stage B tu apa berlaku, stage R tu apa berlaku, macam tu. Okay, right. Okay, next one. Heart murmur. So sebut dia murmur, not murmur. Itu lain, okay? Heart murmur. What is heart murmur? Heart murmur is a detectable hissing sound. Okay? And if you Google, kadang-kadang dia bukan bunyi je. Kadang-kadang dia ada bunyi squishing sound, macam bunyi whooshing sound, macam whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Macam tu. Right? So heart murmur is detectable hissing sound that indicates blood leaking back through a defective valve or due to the valve that is not closed properly, right? So let's say we have atrial systole. During atrial systole should be AV valve open. Macam tu. Dia open lah sepatutnya kan. But what happens sometimes there is a defective valve, dia sepatutnya buka. Tapi dia macam ini je, satu je yang buka. Right? So there is a defective valve. So this will cause the hissing sound or the whooshing sound, something that is different notable sound that can be heard, all right, to indicate that there is a leaking of blood back to due to the defective valve. Okay, right. So you can see that this is just one example, valve that is not closed properly. Okay, right. Okay, finish with cardiac cycle, heart murmur. Okay, now we go to calculation, define and calculate cardiac output. So what is cardiac output? Okay. Okay, what is cardiac output? So cardiac output is the volume of blood that the left ventricle pump into the aorta per minute. Right, so we focus on the left ventricle because it pumps the blood to the rest of the body via aorta or through the aorta per minute. So the volume of blood pumped by the left ventricle per minute, then we call it as cardiac output. And cardiac output is given as stroke volume times heart rate. So you have to hafal this formula. Cardiac output is given as stroke volume times heart rate. What is stroke volume? Stroke volume is the volume of blood pumped by a ventricle in a single contraction. So sekali ventricle contract, what is the volume of the blood? That is stroke volume, and times with heart rate. Then you can get cardiac output. Okay, right. So heart rate is given as contraction or number of beats per minute. All right. Average stroke volume in human is about 70 ml. Maksudnya setiap sekali ventricle kita contract, the amount of blood that is pumped out, right, from the ventricle is 70 ml. 70 ml tu lagi sikit daripada apa nama tu? Perfume yang 100 ml. Okay, right. So next, what is the resting cardiac output for adult? Okay, so given this person have heart rate of 72 beat per minute, so ingat, ini biasanya akan changing depending on the person heart rate. When they are having exercise, the heart rate will be totally increased, kan, right? Or double up. So the average stroke volume is 70 ml per stroke. So thus the average cardiac output for a resting adult is around 5,040 milliliter per minute. Or if you convert, so in 1 minute, our heart pump out 5 liters of blood. 1 minit. You just imagine for 1 hour. You just imagine for 1 day. How many, how many volume atau how hard is our heart need to work for us every single day as long as we live. Kan? Sepanjang hidup kita tanpa berhenti. Tak ada relax langsung pun. So this is the power of Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala. Okay? Right. Okay, but if someone is under stress or is doing heavy exercise, the cardiac output will be increased to 20 to 30 liter per minute. So lebih kurang 5 kali ganda daripada resting. Okay, alright. So that is the cardiac output for someone in exercise or stress. That's why people say that stress can harm your, actually can influence your health. Betul lah. Right? Because you just imagine when you are under stress, right? Your heart actually need to work harder, right? Jantung kena kerja lagi-lagi kuat daripada biasa, right? So mungkinlah logiknya at one point jantung kita dah tak mampu lagi untuk bekerja dengan lebih. Ataupun macam if someone doing heavy exercise, suddenly, if you are athlete, you are regularly practicing, that is okay because your heart is already what we call it, trained to be in that situation. But if someone yang dia biasanya sedentary je, biasa-biasa relax-relax ni je, tiba-tiba dia esok tu bulan puasa hari pertama nak kurus sebab nak raya kan, terus jogging, hari pertama tak pernah selama ni jogging, tiba-tiba jogging pula bukan brisk walk je, jogging, lari laju kan, it can actually cause your heart to be beat irregularly, right? So nanti jantung kita macam orang kata terkejut lah kan, terkejut macam tu. So mungkin tak bagus lah. So that's why if you want to start, you have to start gradually. Okay? Okay, right? So finish with cardiac output. So cardiac output related to the cardiac cycle. Okay? Now we go to describe the initiation and regulation of heart rhythm. Okay? What causes our heart beats? Or what makes ataupun what triggers the heart muscle or heart tissue to contract simultaneously pula tu, right? And then how the heart rhythm can be regulated. Kita punya detak jantung tu biasa macam gini, kadang-kadang dia boleh jadi. Alright, so regulation of heart rhythm. Okay. Okay, and next is basic about ECG or EKG. Okay. Okay, so this is the idea, what you can see, right? So actually our heart has a very special features, right? That actually help to stimulate the whole cardiac muscle to contract simultaneously. This is due to the presence of these two nodes, right? This is what we call as sinoatrial node. And this is known as AV node. Right? And we have another features. You can see all the yellow color to are all fibers, right? That help to transmit impulse, right? Throughout the cardiac tissue, okay? Or cardiac cell, right? Okay, heart rhythm and ECG. Okay, some cardiac muscle are self-excitable. Maknanya it can contract without any signal from the nervous system. Okay, I'm giving you a situation. Okay, maybe you are going to face this situation in our last experiment later, dissection of rat, right? Let's say you have dissect open the rat. Dah buka dah ni, rangka dia ni, dia punya rib cage semua dah terdedah, dah apa semua kan. And suddenly you nampak jantung dia masih lagi. So you pun macam, madam, tikus ni hidup lagi lah madam. Tak, dia tak hidup, dia dah mati dah sebenarnya. Cuma, you have to know that some cardiac muscle are self-excitable. Dia boleh contract sendiri tanpa any signal from the brain, right? From the nervous system. Walaupun sebenarnya nervous system dah mati, right? Brain function dah tak ada function. But then, the heart can still beat because they are self-excitable cell. Okay, right. So what makes that happen? Kenapa dia boleh contract sendiri? That is due to the presence of sinoatrial node, or we call as the pacemaker. Okay, sinoatrial node. Madam, boleh ke saya tulis macam madam tulis tadi? SA, boleh. Make sure SA, capital S, capital A, node. Then that is fine. Okay, kot lah you all lupa macam mana ejaan sinoatrial kan? So you can use SA node, right? Okay, the SA node is located in the wall of the right atrium. So it is here, in the wall of the right atrium. And the function of sinoatrial node is to set the rate and timing at which all the cardiac muscle will contract. All the cardiac muscle cell to contract. So dia lah yang akan initiate the rate and the timing. Okay, right. Okay, so you have here, this is the sinoatrial node or the SA node. Okay, so next we have here atrioventricular node. Nama dia atrioventricular because it is located between atria and also ventricle. So that's why nama dia atrioventricular node, or you can use as AV node, right? And then down here, we have bundle of keys. Okay, right? And then this is the Purkinje fiber. Okay, that is located down to the apex of the heart. Okay, ini kita panggil apex of heart. Okay, apex means macam dia punya tunjang lah kot, puncak ke apa, macam tu lah. Right, apex of the heart. So these are the structure that actually set the rhythm and control or regulate the heart rhythm. Okay, right. Okay, before we go to the detail, right? So this is the difference between the two type of heart. Okay, myogenic heart and neurogenic heart. Okay, for vertebrate heart is known as myogenic heart. Myo means muscle. Okay, so the pacemaker, right, which is the node, is located, it's made of specialized tissue, and the pacemaker is located within the heart. You can see just now, right? SA node and AV node is located within the heart. So this is what we call as a myogenic heart, where the pacemaker is located within the heart itself. Whereby for arthropods like macam spider, okay, scorpion, all right. So most arthropods like scorpion, spiders, okay, and some other example, they have neurogenic heart. Come from the word neuro, nervous system. So meaning the pacemaker is not located within the heart, but the pacemaker is located in the nervous system, which is outside the heart. All right. So that is the two different lah, myogenic heart and also neurogenic heart. Okay. Right. Okay. All right. What factors that influence the pace of SA node? Maknanya, apa faktor yang mempengaruhi kadar ataupun pace, what is pace? Macam kerja SA node, right? Macam lagi banyak dia send signal so that your heart can contract ke, slow ke. Alright, so what are the factors that influence the pace of SA node? The first one is influenced by two set of nerve with antagonistic signal. Nombor satu, two set of nerve. Sympathetic nerve, parasympathetic nerve. Sympathetic nerve is a network of nerve that helps your body to activate fight or flight. Maknanya, sympathetic nerve usually activated, right? Whenever you are in a mode of survival. which sympathetic nerve will increase your heart rate. Contoh bila you kena kejar anjing. So masa tu fight and flight sedang activated lah, right? You are running to save yourself, right? So your heart rate will increase. Jantung you akan lagi pump laju. So the pace of SA node will increase so that your heart can pump more blood to the rest of your body because you are running to escape, right? From the dogs, for example. Okay. As for parasympathetic nerve is a network of nerve that relax your body after period of stress or danger. Or in other words, parasympathetic nerve promote calmness. Promote calm, apa lagi ya? Conservation of energy. So inilah. Ini semua adalah parasympathetic nerve. Contoh, after meal, lepas makan, parasympathetic nerve will be activated. That's why lepas makan you akan rasa mengantuk. Kan? Kenapa? Because one of the factor is it reduce your heart rate. Parasympathetic nerve will reduce your heart rate. Okay? Right. So that is the first one or first factors that influence the action of your pacemaker. Okay? Which is the SA node. Okay. Second factor is hormone, the action of hormone. There are hormone that will help to increase your heart rate. For example, epinephrine ataupun nama lain dia adrenaline. Okay, so adrenaline or epinephrine will increase your heart rate because the target tissue of epinephrine is your heart muscle or heart cell. So it will increase the heart rate. Okay, and number 3 is body temperature, right? An increase of only 1 degree Celsius will raise your heart rate about 10 beat per minute. Contoh, bila you tengah exercise. When you are doing exercise, your body temperature increase. So when your body temperature increase, it will also induce your heartbeat to increase. Right? About 10 beat per minute. That's why bila you exercise, your heart rate akan lebih tinggi. That's to increase the cardiac output, so more blood can be sent to your body. Right? Ataupun kalau perasan, when you fall sick, fever contohnya. Kalau perasan lah, especially dekat kanak-kanak. Bila dia demam, heart rate dia akan naik. Alright? Kita rasa badan ni, kita pegang jantung ni pun, kita rasa jantung ni duduk laju. Temperature, increase in temperature will increase the heart rate. Okay, right. And next one is in relation ataupun somehow related to body temperature, exercise, of course. So exercise will increase the activity of SA node. Okay. So these are factors that can influence pace of SA node. Okay. So control of the heart rhythm. So how this SA node and AV node can actually influence the contraction of the heart. Okay. Sekejap, mana tunjuk ni dulu. Tak ada. Okay. Okay. So we start with the first one. Okay, sikit lagi, lepas tu we go for break. Okay. Right. The first one. Look at the yellow color in the heart. Okay. So signal, yellow in color, from the SA node spread through the atria. So what happened? SA node or the pacemaker will spread signal. The signal is in the form of electrical signal atau kita panggil impulse. So you bayangkan SA node tu macam Swiss. Dia macam dia macam keluar kan ataupun menghantar electrical signal. So this electrical signal spread to the wall of both atria. Right? And cause the atria to contract. Apa kesan as the electrical signal spread to the wall of atria? It will cause your atria to contract. Okay, right? So atria will contract. So what happened to the blood? Blood from the atria will be pumped into the ventricle. Macam itulah, itu yang akan berlaku. Okay, and what happened to the signal? Okay, the signal will then, signal tadi from the atria, spread to the wall of atrium, right? dan dia akan sampai dekat sini, AV node. Okay, dia akan sampai dekat AV node. Okay, apa yang berlaku? Okay, at AV node, the signal will be delayed. Bila sampai dekat AV node, the signal will be delayed. Maybe around 0.1 second as we discuss in cardiac cycle. Right? Maksudnya apa? Signal tu akan terstop sekejap. 0.1 saat. Untuk pastikan apa? To make sure all blood in the atrium is already emptied into the ventricle. Nak pastikan atria tu dah kosong before ventricle contract. So atria kena kosong dulu. That's why the signal is delayed for few seconds, 0.1 second. Right? To make sure all blood in the atria has been emptied into the ventricle. Okay? And that is why in ECG machine, ingat ECG machine tu machine yang kita tengok kat hospital tu, yang duk net. Yang net tu awak tahu orang tu dah mati. Kan? Mati tu maksudnya bila net tu meaning there is no electrical signal within the heart. Dah tak ada maksudnya penghasilan ataupun pergerakan electrical signal that spread to the wall of the heart. So you faham, there is no contraction of the heart anymore. So orang tu kita consider meninggal dunia lah. Macam tu, okay? Right. So for the first one tadi, the first signal as a node spread to the wall of the atria, you will have this signal, ECG. You akan nampak there is a big, small peak, right? So this indicate atrial systole or atrial contract. And you can see here, there is a delay of signal for a while. Maksudnya dia bukan naik ke atas ke, bukan turun ke bawah, tapi dia stagnant. Dia merata macam tu kan. So maksudnya no spreading of signal. Right? So ini menunjukkan apa tadi? Signal is delayed at the AV node. Maksudnya no activities of electrical signal. Okay. And then next one, what happened? The signal then will pass down to the branches. Okay, bundle branches ataupun kita panggil tadi bundle of His, right? Electrical signal pass to the bundle of His and then going to the Purkinje fiber. They spread down to the wall of ventricle. Right? So this is what you can see in ECG. The signal will be a little bit going down lah. Right? So apa maksud dia tu? Nanti kita belajar chapter 5. Right? Okay. Next, what happened? Next, the signal spread to the ventricle. So electrical signal tadi dia akan sampai to down to the apex from bundle of His and then spread up to the Purkinje fiber. Then you will have this peak dust macam ni. So this actually giving you a signal that the ventricle is contract. Okay, so this indicate ventricular diastole. Systole. Okay, right? So this is just a surface, right? Idea on what happened for in the controlling of heart rhythm by SA node and also AV node, and what you can see in ECG reading. Okay. Any question? Okay, tak ada. So continue. Right. So all the wave that you can see in the ECG is given as or symbol by wave. Right. So we have the first peak we call as P wave. Right. Next peak is QRS. 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 Right. And this one is T wave. Okay, so as for here, we have P, Q, R, S, and T. Okay, so the P wave Remember P wave, what happened during P wave? So macam mana boleh dapat this wave? The SA node spread signal to the wall of atrium and cause the atrium to contract. So you can see that this wave is actually represent contraction of atrium, or we call as depolarization of atria. Madam, what is depolarization of atria? It's something happen or related to the changes of ions or movement of ions across the membrane. So we are going to detail out this in chapter 5. Okay, all right. But the idea is you can have contraction of atrium. Okay, what about QRS complex? So the QRS complex, remember what happened during this wave, right? Signal that has been passed down from the bundle of His, then spread up to the Purkinje fiber, right? Through and then spread to the wall of both ventricle and cause the ventricle to contract. So this wave indicates ventricular depolarization or contraction of ventricle. Okay, then you have this wave, right? And next wave is T wave. All right. So T wave indicates ventricular repolarization, right? So to easy understand, I would say as ventricular relaxation. Okay. All right. So madam, repolarization tu apa? Sama juga, it actually involve movement of ions, which makes membrane inside of the membrane is negative compared to the outside. All right. So quite difficult to explain now, but you are going to learn it in chapter 5. Okay, right. So this is what we can have in every single contraction of heart. Okay, P, Q, R, S, and T wave. All right, and lastly, this is summary, right? You can see what happened at each stage. Okay, we start with atrial systole. You can have the P wave, and then ventricular systole, QRS, and then atrial ventricular diastole referred as the T wave. Okay. Okay, similar picture. All right. Okay, so next we are going to learn about the blood vessel, comparison between artery, vein, and capillary, and also what happened to the blood pressure in each of the blood vessel. Okay, so take your 5 minutes break and we will continue after this. Okay, take 5. Okay, let's continue with LO to compare the structure and function of arteries, vein, and capillary, and to describe the blood pressure in the blood vessel. Okay. Right, compare the structure and function of arteries, vein, and capillary. So I guess you don't have any problem to understand this because you have prior knowledge related to the structure of artery, veins, and capillary. Okay, all right. So first, okay, look here. So this is artery. Okay, right. So smaller branch of artery, we call it as arteriole. Smaller branches or small branches of artery we call as arteriole. Okay, so arteriole later connected to the capillaries, or we call as the capillary bed or network of capillaries. Okay, next from the capillary it will be connected or it will join with, or I mean connected to the venule. Venule is the small branch of vein, smaller branch of vein, okay, before it merge into a large vein. All right, so both artery and vein, right, has 3 layers of tissue. You can see the first layer over here, the second layer of smooth muscle, and the endothelium. Right, sama je for vein. But somehow you can see different is in terms of the thickness. The first layer or the outer layer of the artery is thicker compared to the outer layer of vein. Similarly to the second layer. of artery is thicker compared to the second layer of the vein. All right. Okay. So this is something that you can see as overview. Okay. Now let's see the detail. Okay. Wall of arteries and vein have three similar layer. The outside, or some book as stated as tunica externa, right? So the outermost layer, right, or we call as the tunica externa, composed of connective tissue with elastic fiber and collagen fiber. So the connective tissue is composed of elastic fiber and collagen fiber. So this will allow the vessel to stretch and recoil because of the elastic fiber. So collagen fiber provides strength, basically, okay? Allow the vessel to stretch and recoil. Okay. The middle layer, so this is the outer layer of artery and vein, right? Which composed of network of elastic fibers and collagen fibers. Okay. The middle layer, or some textbooks stated or written as tunica media. Okay, so the middle layer composed of a lot of smooth muscle and more elastic fiber. So a lot more of elastic fiber and smooth muscle. So the smooth muscle help the artery and vein to continue contracting for a longer time, even though the contraction is very, very slow, but it is prolonged, okay, to allow prolonged contraction. Prolonged, slow contraction. So blood can be flow effectively within the vessel. And the inner layer, the yellow color, right, is inner layer, or named as tunica intima. Okay, the inner layer or the lining of lumen is composed of endothelium. Endothelium is a single layer of latent cell that help to minimize resistance for the blood to flow. So that is why blood can flow efficiently, right? Or in other words, it helps to reduce friction, minimize resistance or minimize friction for the blood to flow. Okay, sorry, jap. Okay, right? So what is the endothelium layer? So this is the endothelium layer, right? You can see, right? It is just a composed of a flattened cell, right? That help to reduce resistance for the blood to flow. Okay, right. Okay, next. Artery have thicker middle and outer layer compared to vein. Why artery have thicker middle and outer layer compared to vein? It is helped to accommodate high pressure of blood that is pumped from the heart, right? So arteries that we referred here is aorta and pulmonary vein. Pulmonary artery. Okay, all right. So arteries have thicker middle and outer layer compared to vein because artery help to ataupun provide a high pressure of blood that's pumped from the heart, because artery will pump blood out of the heart. Aorta, okay, pulmonary artery, so it pumps blood out of the heart. Okay, so their elasticity helps to maintain the blood pressure when the heart is relaxed. So that's why they have a lot of elastic fiber as well as smooth fiber. So to maintain the pressure, right, or to maintain prolonged contraction even when the heart is relaxed. Okay. Okay, so remember, a small branch of artery we call as arteriole, the smaller branch of vein we call as venule. Okay, because we are going to, actually encounters with this name a lot in chapter 6 later. Okay. Okay, blood flow in the vein. Okay, in the thinner wall of vein, blood have tendency to flows back. Also, blood can flows back to the heart mainly due to the action of skeletal muscle. Right? Contoh. You are marching. So during marching, you have to stand still, right? So what happened is most of the blood will actually going down to your feet. Okay? And perasan tak, kita punya cikgu ke dulu ke coach ke, dia akan cakap, okay, bila dah berdiri lama tu, goyang-goyang, gerak-gerakkan ibu jari kaki. Kenapa nak kena gerak-gerakkan ibu jari kaki? Because somehow it can contract your muscle. So by this contraction of muscle, it can help bring the blood back, right, to the heart. Okay, right. Kalau tak, dia akan kumpul kat bawah, kat kaki. So awak akan pening, lepas tu awak akan pengsan. Okay, so the contraction of skeletal muscle help the blood to flows back into the heart. Okay, right. Within large vein, there is flap of tissue that act as one-way valve that allow blood to flow only towards the heart. So in vena cava, pulmonary vein, okay, ni. All right, so vena cava, pulmonary vein have a flap of tissue that we call as valve. Okay, that ensures the blood can flow in one direction, okay, towards the heart. That's why you can see in this picture, all right, vein has valve. Okay. Right. Okay, next. What about capillary? So capillary is just composed of endothelium, platen cell, right, and basement membrane that enhance exchange of material. Okay, so that is for capillary. Okay, so you can see from this cross section, right, it is obviously showing you that the artery have thicker outer and middle layer compared to vein. Okay, all right. So you can see ni tunica media, middle layer, tunica interna, interna ataupun intima, sama je. Okay, and also tunica externa, the outer layer. All right. Okay. Okay, next one. Comparison of blood vessels in terms of their structure. The apa nama? The smooth muscle, the elastic tissue, size of lumen, blood pressure, presence of valve, and also in terms of function. Okay, right. Okay, so you can see here, artery have thick, smooth muscle, right, compared to vein. Right, smooth muscle can be found in which layer?
Middle layer.
Middle layer. Thank you, Sharif. Okay. All right. And elastic tissue is abundant in artery compared to vein. Elastic tissue or elastic fiber can be found both in the outer layer and also middle layer. Okay. In terms of lumen size, okay, we can compare by referring to this picture. Maybe we can see it more clear, right? Clearer. So vein has large lumen, larger lumen compared to artery. Okay, so that is lumen size in terms of lumen size. Right, so vein has larger lumen compared to artery and smallest in the capillary. Janganlah macam madam, tadi kan capillary tu nampak dia punya ring macam bulat lagi kan madam kan. So itu sebab nak tunjuk gambar. Kalau kita tengok betul-betul tak adalah dia besar gitu kan. Alright, so smallest lumen in the capillary. And in terms of blood pressure, So blood flows in the artery have higher pressure compared to vein. Right? Habis tu madam, kalau pressure darah in the vein is lower, what makes blood can flow within the vein? What is the answer? What enable blood can still flow in the vein even though the blood pressure in the vein is low? Ada tadi kita discuss. Apa dia?
Skeletal muscle action, madam.
Very good. Okay. Due to the contraction of skeletal muscle. Okay, right? And then next is in terms of function. Okay. Artery transport blood away from the heart. Aorta, pulmonary artery, so they are transporting blood out of the heart. Whereby vein transport blood back to the heart, like vena cava dengan pulmonary vein. Okay, right. And next, in terms of for capillary just involved in exchange of material between blood and extracellular fluid. Okay, last one is in terms of valve. Okay, so for artery, semilunar valve can be found only in aorta and pulmonary artery, and whereby for vein, usually vein has valve, so we call as venous valve, right? And no valve in capillary. Okay, right. So that is the comparison. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay, next we go to blood pressure. Tetap ni. Okay. Okay, blood pressure. Medium slow sangat ke? Medium rasa macam medium slow lah. Okay. Ke okay je?
Okay je, madam.
Okay je, okay. Alright. Takut nanti you open macam macam tu kan. Okay. Alright. Blood pressure. What is blood pressure? Okay. So blood pressure is hydrostatic pressure exerted by the blood against the inner wall of the blood vessel. So ni. Force given or pressure given from the blood to the inner wall of blood vessel, we call it as blood pressure. Okay, so blood pressure, high blood pressure ke, low blood pressure ke, can be determined by cardiac output. Okay, blood volume, jumlah darah yang mengalir dalam blood vessel tersebut, right? And peripheral resistance ataupun kita panggil sebagai rintangan. Right, so this factor can actually influence blood pressure. Okay, example, when the cardiac output is increased, remember, like you are doing exercise, right? So your heart pump more blood, your cardiac output is increased. So as your cardiac output increase, more blood pump from your heart to the rest of your body, the blood flow within the blood vessel will increase. Right? So as the blood flow increase, lagi banyak darah lalu dekat kita punya blood vessel, so then blood pressure will increase. So more pressure exert to the wall, inner wall of the blood vessel, then increase the blood pressure. Okay? But when the cardiac output is low, blood flow is low, then the blood pressure will be lower. Okay? Right, so that is one factor. Okay, second, just now, blood volume. Okay? Volume ataupun jumlah darah. Okay, so when your blood volume is lower, jumlah darah rendah, contohnya due to hemorrhage, okay, berlaku pendarahan ataupun chronic bleeding, contohnya due to accident, surgery, okay, apa nama tu, giving birth, contohlah kan, alright. So your blood volume can lose a lot. Right, so lower in blood volume will cause low in blood flow. Bila darah tak banyak, maka darah yang mengalir dalam vessel pun akan kurang, and thus it will cause lower in term of blood pressure. Okay, that's why it is very crucial to have what we call it, during operation ke surgery ke kan. Kita dah tengok drama banyak kan. So bila blood pressure rendah je tiba-tiba semua kalut dalam OT tu kan. Sebab bila blood pressure rendah, it can cause fatal. So you have to increase the blood pressure. Okay, so one of the factors that cause the blood pressure to drop is the loss of blood volume. Okay, all right. Okay, and then next, number 3 is peripheral resistance, halangan. Right, peripheral resistance is the resistance for the blood to flow. Right, it is caused by rintangan ataupun halangan untuk blood flow. Right, disebabkan oleh satu, blood viscosity, kepekatan darah. Ada orang darah dia a little bit pekat. Kenapa? Jumlah air in the blood plasma a little bit low. Okay, darah dia pekat. Contoh kan, kalau you tengok orang derma darah, perasan tak dalam dia punya plastik tu ada yang nampak darah dia macam merah sangat ataupun macam nampak very less viscous lah. Ada setengah dia macam darah dia nampak cair kan. So blood viscosity. Right, number 1 is blood viscosity. Biasanya orang darah tinggi, right? Biasanya blood viscosity dia tinggi. Darah dia agak pekat. That's why biasanya doktor akan bagi dia ubat cair darah. Nak bagi darah dia a little bit viscous. Or else bila darah pekat nanti darah susah nak mengalir kan. Nanti tersumbat pula. So that is one. Okay, peripheral resistance is the resistance for the blood to flow and it is caused by blood viscosity and also due to friction, berlakunya geseran between the blood and the blood vessel wall. Okay, so you can see from here, blood pressure can be influenced by the blood flow and also peripheral resistance. Okay, so you can see here when the cardiac output increase, blood flow also will increase. Okay, thus increase the blood pressure. Okay, when the blood volume is decreased, so blood flow is decreased, then it will decrease the blood pressure. Okay, right. So next, what happened to peripheral resistance, right? Increase in blood viscosity, right? Or increase in vasoconstriction. What does it mean by vasoconstriction? Vasoconstriction maksudnya kita punya salur darah mengecil, right? So increase in vasoconstriction will increase peripheral resistance, akan meninggikan halangan, meningkatkan rintangan. So kalau rintangan bertambah, biasanya blood pressure akan bertambah. Sebab dia macam benda nak lalu tak boleh, so dia akan macam push macam tu. Okay, right. Okay, so that is some idea related to blood flow, velocity, peripheral resistance towards blood pressure. Okay. Okay, next. Constriction of blood vessel, or we call as vasoconstriction, will reduce the diameter of the blood vessel, thus increase friction between the blood and blood vessel, menambahkan rintangan ataupun geseran antara darah dengan blood vessel. Thus, it will increase the blood pressure. Okay, right? And dilation of blood vessel, or we call as vasodilation, right? Bila salur darah kita mengembang, okay, mengembang, so friction between blood and blood vessel will reduce. So kuranglah dia punya geseran. So bila kurang geseran, so the blood pressure will decrease. Okay, so the BP reading, thus blood pressure reading is given as systolic pressure and diastolic pressure. So yang atas ni, bacaan yang atas ni systolic pressure, yang bawah ni ialah diastolic pressure. Maknanya apa? 145 tu is bacaan of blood pressure when your blood vessel is undergo vasoconstriction. Bila diameter of the blood vessel kecil, kita akan ukur berapa pressure pada saat tersebut ataupun pada masa tersebut. So the highest pressure dia, right? So that is systolic pressure, right? And then the next one is the reading when your blood vessel is dilated, the blood can flow. And what is the reading? So that is systolic pressure. Okay, right. So you can see in this picture, systolic pressure is measured when the heart is contract, while diastolic pressure is measured when the heart is relaxed between the beat. Okay. Okay. Systolic pressure is the pressure in the arteries during ventricular systole. So kita nak tengok berapa pressure darah that came out from the heart during ventricular systole. When ventricle contract, so what is the pressure of the heart? What is the pressure of blood from the heart? Right? So that is systolic pressure. And diastolic pressure is the pressure in the arteries during during diastole. Okay, so diastolic pressure is the pressure to the arteries when it is in relaxation mode. So berapa pula pressure dia pada dia dah whenever dia dah relax. That's why whenever we are measuring the blood pressure, we are using this machine known as sphygmomanometer. First, we are going to give some pressure to our blood vessel. Sekarang kita kepit kita balutkan pakai cuff tu kan, right? And we put pressure to the blood vessel. So the blood vessel will be vasoconstricted. Alright. So at one point, so that is the reading of the blood pressure, systolic pressure. And lama kelamaan perasan tak, cuff tu akan jadi sedikit macam dia kembang macam tu. So actually it causes your blood vessel to be dilated. Then you are going to measure the blood vessel during vasodilation. So this is what I call as diastolic pressure. So normal BP pressure is 120 and 70 mmHg. Okay. Systolic 120, diastolic 70. Okay. Okay. Dari situation ada orang, contohlah, bacaan dia 140, 110. Nampak tak? Diastolic pressure 110, which is high. Maknanya apa? Even when your arteries is already in relaxation mode, but the pressure of the blood in the artery is very high. It's still very high. Meaning to say something is actually happened to your blood vessel. Mungkin sebab banyak rintangan, ada lemak-lemak tersekat ke dekat kita punya wall of our blood vessel ke, which cause the friction to be increased, alright, resistance to be increased and increase the blood pressure. Okay, so orang biasa darah tinggi macam ni lah bacaan diorang, macam tu, okay, ataupun maybe higher than that. Okay, right. Next, we go to the changes in the blood pressure within each of the blood vessel. Okay. So look at this picture carefully. You can refer to textbook page 1006, right? So the red color, the orange color over here is actually refers to the arteries. Okay, starting from the largest arteries that we call as aorta, and smaller branches of it is artery and then arteriole. Okay, and you have the purple color over here is capillary, right? Next, a blue color venule, vein, and then large veins, which is vena cava. So you can see that the pressure inside the artery is higher compared to the pressure inside the vein. And in fact, the pressure inside the vein is very, very low, right? Paling rendah pun dekat vein, right? But what makes blood can still flow within the vein? So we have discussed earlier. Okay, right. Now, blood pressure is highest in aorta and artery. And you can see it decreases significantly. Okay, the pressure will decreases as it passes through the arteriole and to the capillaries. Right? Apa sebab dia? First, because you can see the cross section over here. You just bayangkan satu pipe utama, pressure dia of course yang paling tinggi kan. And then when it sub branches, go into the sub branches, of course the pressure will be divided into branches. Kalau tadi pressure dia 10, dah ada 4 branch, of course dia akan jadi 10 bagi 4 berapa? Kan korang kira. Right? Berapa? 25 berapa? Gitu. Dia akan kena bahagi. That's why the pressure will be decreased slightly as it passes to the what call it, arteriole and capillary. Of course, in capillary the pressure will be very, very low because you have bundle or numerous number of capillary. Alright, so lagi kecil-kecil dia punya branches. Right, so pressure will be very, very low. Okay, and then the pressure is lowest in veins. Right, why? Because the pressure by the pumping of heart has already dissipated. You just imagine darah dah lalu dalam capillary, pressure dah sangat rendah, macam mana pula daripada pressure rendah tu dia nak jadi tinggi balik kan? Alright, so that's why the pressure has already dissipated. Dissipated means pressure tu dah macam hilang dah as it travel from the arteries to the arteriole to the capillaries. But what makes blood can still flow in the vein despite the lower blood pressure in the vein? That is due to the contraction of skeletal muscle. So the contraction of skeletal muscle squeeze the vein, right? So as it squeeze the vein, it can help to create pressure for the blood to flow within the vein, right? Okay, so that is how to explain and how to understand the changes in blood pressure at different blood vessel. Okay, right. Any question? Okay.
Tak ada.
Okay, all right. Okay, next we go to list some cardiovascular diseases. So this is very simple since our LO is to list. Okay, list some cardiovascular diseases like atherosclerosis, hypertension, myocardial infarction, right? Stroke and angina pectoris. So you can actually Google yourself if you can't understand, but somehow you can see from this picture, atherosclerosis is defined as deposition of fat tissue or maybe biasanya fatty tissue lah in the wall of the blood vessel. So dia akan meningkatkan, it will increase friction or increase resistance for the blood to flow. Okay, and atherosclerosis toward the end, it can lead to hypertension ataupun increase in blood pressure because there is a lot of resistance for the blood to flow, then it will increase blood pressure. Okay, right. Okay, next, myocardial infarction. Myocardial infarction, myotissue cardial is cardiac, right? Myocardial infarction is a situation when certain area or certain tissue of your heart tissue is starved with oxygen. Ada bahagian-bahagian tisu pada jantung yang mati, right? Sebab starving of oxygen. Disebabkan dia tak dapat oxygen. So this will lead to myocardial infarction. Or we can say as the highest level of myocardial infarction, dia akan menyebabkan jadinya heart attack. Okay, so dia akan menyebabkan myocardial infarction leads to heart attack. So when certain area of your cardiac tissue died, okay, due to lacking of oxygen. So oxygen cannot be reached dekat kawasan tu. Why oxygen tak sampai, madam, kat kawasan tu, madam? Because certain area ataupun this area, for example, of the blood vessel that of the coronary artery, for example, that send the blood to your heart tissue is blocked. Kan ada bahagian salur-salur jantung yang menghantar oksigen kepada tisu-tisu di keliling jantung tu tersumbat. So bila tersumbat, oksigen tak sampai to that particular tissue. So it will cause myocardial infarction. Okay. And next is stroke, right? So stroke is specifically happen ataupun we refer to the brain tissue. So stroke is the death of the brain tissue with similar factor, right, due to blockage of certain area in the blood vessel surrounding the brain tissue. So that area will be lack of oxygen and lama-lama tisu tu akan mati. So bila tisu tu mati, dia akan jadi stroke. Okay, and last one is angina pectoris. So angina pectoris is chest pain. occasional chest pain. Macam kita tengok cerita drama Melayu ke apa kan, tiba-tiba orang tu macam macam rasa sesak nafas, dia pegang kat dada sebelah kiri. Itu adalah angina pectoris, occasional chest pain that actually indicates berlakunya myocardial infarction ataupun dah berlakunya ada start lah death of cardiac tissue. Okay, right. So that is all that you have to know about some of the cardiovascular disease. Okay. Okay, so this is what we have discussed earlier lah. Okay, disorder that related to the heart and the blood vessel of the heart. Okay, all right. Okay, so just a little bit more about Islamization part. Okay, so Allah mentioned in Surah Ar-Ra'du, those who believe and whose heart find assurance and peace in the remembrance of Allah. For the remembrance of Allah, heart will find assurance and peace. Dengan mengingati Allah, hati akan menjadi tenang. Right? So, what actually disease of our spiritual heart? Kita sebut spiritual heart. Kita ada jantung ni physical heart. Spiritual heart pun ada penyakit dia. Yang physical heart, we have penyakit juga. Tadi itulah myocardial infarction lah, atherosclerosis lah, stroke kat kepala. Okay, dekat brain. Angina lah. So that is disease related to the physical heart. What about the disease of our spiritual heart? We do have disease of our spiritual heart. Macam apa? Siapa nak bagi contoh?
Hasad.
Hasad, very good. Hasad. Okay. Hasad dengki tu adik-beradik dia lah kan. Hasad dengki. Lagi apa? Rasa tak cukup. Rasa orang lain tu. Apa lagi? Siapa nak share? Riak. Kan? Riak, ujub, takabur, sombong. So these are all the disease of our spiritual heart. Right? Which bulan Ramadan ni pun tak boleh kita nak heal pun. Right. Walaupun kata syaitan berbisik kat manusia, tapi Allah ikat. Semua iblis syaitan kena ikat. Right. Jadi macam mana kita masih lagi ada rasa hasad dengan orang? Tengok orang tu punya baju raya lain macam, cantik dia. Kita punya baju raya Chap je. Kan? Right. So kenapa kita ada rasa benda tu? So that is our spiritual heart disease. Yang kita sendiri kena lawan. Sebab Allah dah bagi dah syaitan, iblis semua kena ikat. Jadi siapa nak berperang dengan diri sendiri ni? Kita lah. Right? So kalau kita tak mampu nak lawan kita punya spiritual heart disease, then Ramadan is nothing lah. Maksudnya kita gagal lah dalam kita punya tarbiyah Ramadan. Macam gitu. Ya, tazkirah 1 minit daripada Madam Nurul. Okay? Right. So, what would be their remedies? So, kita tahu kita ni manusia lemah, we have somehow, ada je penyakit-penyakit spiritual heart ni kan. So, how to avoid that from orang kata apa, semakin teruk ke, akan menghalang dia daripada berlaku ke, right? Contoh, bagi Madam contoh. Istighfar. Lagi? Mana tahu keluar soalan Islamization? Baca Quran. Okay, lagi?
Banyakkan berzikir, Madam.
Banyakkan berzikir. Okay, alright. Because in remembrance of Allah, your heart will find assurance. Okay, very good. Okay, lagi. Ini dia tarbiyah 27 Ramadan ni. Okay, lagi? Lagi apa? Syukur. Kalau kita akan rasa syukur, kalau kita sentiasa bersyukur, insyaAllah kita takkan ada rasa dengki. Because syukur means you just accept whatever that you have without comparing with whatever that people have. Kan? So kita tak perlu nak compare. So kita syukur dengan apa yang kita ada. So insyaAllah that will be actually treat the spiritual heart. Kan? Okay, insyaAllah. Okay, so that actually mark our end of lesson for today. Okay, so next class we will continue with human lymphatic system, another type of circulatory system, and we will finish up by discussion of transportation in plants. Next class. Okay, right. Ada soalan?